stories making headlines in the East African region of our continent as we get into conversation with journalist and team leader at Grassroot Journalism Kenya, Dennis Beru. Dennis, how are you on this Tuesday? Always great catching up.
Thank you so much, Asanda Beda. I'm doing well. Of course, we are doing well with your son, Benny McCarthy. And yes, Kenya is happy.
Yes, great. And it's so great to hear some great news, in terms of Kenya celebrating and all that. Let's start with Tanzania today, though, and we'll touch on Kenya because there is some story coming out of there as well. Tanzania, a court there has banned the live coverage of treason proceedings against the nation's opposition leader. What can you tell us about this? Tundu Lissu faces treason charges. Of course, we know now proceedings cannot be covered live.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. These are very sad ruling because a court on Monday ruled that, or rather, it banned live coverage of a treason proceeding against East Africa's nation main opposition leader Tundu Lissu, who criticized the decision. The principal resident magistrate, Franco Kiswaga, say that the ban would protect civilian prosecution, of course, citing the weaknesses and a request by the state to the state prosecutor who said it was necessary to conceal their identities. And I remember, Asanda, that Lissu has already opposed the request, saying such an order will allow court to operate in darkness and prevent his supporters from following the case. And the official from East Chadema party also criticized the court order. And I remember Tundu Lissu is facing treason-related charges, and he has been in custody since April 2025. And this comes at a time when, of course, Tanzania will be heading to polls in less than 2 months. And there are a lot of concerns from the opposition party, that is Chadema. How are they going to this election without their main opposition leader? I remember Lissu was shot 21 times in 2017 in assassination attempt, was the runners-up in the 2020 presidential election, but his party has been disqualified from participating in the October presidential and parliamentary election.
Is this a way of discouraging support for Lissu? Because as you mentioned, his followers are not going to be able to follow the case, and he's seen this as a court proceeding that's going to be operating in darkness.
Of course, yes, and this is just a trick by the so-called, the state, because they do not want his supporters to follow the proceeding, and where the case has been so far, and barring or denying the supporters an opportunity to follow the proceeding. Of course, it is against the law. And remember, Tundu Lissu is representing himself because he refused to have lawyers represent himself. So we are going to experience a very tricky situation with the Tundu Lissu case.
Does the ban apply only to local media? Does it apply to all media, including international?
Of course, yes. The ban cuts across both from local media and international media. Yes.
Let's move now to talking about Uganda. Actually, let's talk Kenya before we get to Uganda. There are efforts in the country there where you are to accelerate the digital transformation of the country. There was a meeting held on this one. What was the focus exactly that the ICT sector in Kenya hosted a workshop for?
course, Kenya is doing well in the ICT, and on Friday, the ICT Authority convened a sensitization workshop on Friday to the Kenya School of Government that is in Lower Kabete, bringing together its leadership, the project implementation team, and the ICT officers from across the 47 counties. The meeting focused on a flagship initiative, including the digital superhighway, the Horn of Africa Gateway Development Project, and of course the Kenya Digital Economy Acceleration Program. Of course, the board chairperson, Honorable Cecil Amasili C. Gok, encouraged the country and regional ICT officers described as digital ambassadors to act as the authorities' eye and on ground. She also urged them to provide regular feedback from communities to ensure digital shift delivers, of course, the practical benefits. And of course, in addition to that, the acting CEO, Silva Owiti, praised the officers for surpassing the many of the authorities target, crediting their collective effort and resilience. Of course, as I quote him, he said, the key metrics shows a positive and the stakeholders' feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. We have successfully navigated the challenges, emerged as stronger. That is the sentiments of Silva, with the acting ICT authority. Of course, the discussion at the workshop covered infrastructure development, digital skills, risk management, human resources, and maintenance support. The session also underscored the importance of collaboration between national and county teams to strengthen service delivery and accelerate Kenya's digital economy.
What has emerged as the tools that will be needed to ensure that there is a successful digital shift in the country, and how will these be measured as time goes?
Of course, as I said, Kenya is really doing well on ICT, and of course, to ensure that we achieve that, there is need to make sure that there is support the innovators, because innovation is very key on this subject, and of course, fostering the relationship across teams to build that trust, and then of course enhancing the understanding. I think this is some of the tools that if we really need to get there, we must get them so that at least our ICT space is safeguarded.
Right, let's move to Uganda then now. Looking at higher exports the country is, and they've launched their first large-scale gold mine. How much do we know that this project cost?
Of course, this is a 250 million US dollar, and it is a Chinese-owned project in the country is that will also refine bullion to 99.9% purity. This according to the statement from the presidential office. And of course, Uganda, which is a landlocked country, which has a variety of minerals, including copper, cobalt, and of course, iron ore, wants to expand its mining industry and position itself as a major gold producer and exporter. And remember, Asanda, last year Uganda raised about 3.4 billion US dollar from the gold export. This according to the central bank data, and about that 7% of the country's total export revenue. The figure includes a re-export of gold brought into the country, with nearly all its domestic production from a small scale artisanal miners. Of course, while its gold exports earning have increased in recent years, of course, it is still far from being Africa's largest bullion producers. Of course, we've seen the likes of Ghana, which raised around 11.6 billion US dollar from the shipment of the metal last year. And of course, this is an achievement to Uganda because a district of Busia has a lot of gold.
Will it attract more investment? Is that the projection?
Of course, yes, and the Wagagai gold mining project, which is owned by the Wagagai Mining Limited, covering just 9 square kilometers in Busatu district, which was now inaugurated by President Yoweri Museveni. And of course, the target is to make sure that there are more investors coming in because different investors would really like to come in and start trade with Uganda for gold. And I remember Uganda is constructing a 2.7 billion, which is a 2.7 billion euro standard gauge railway to reduce the cost of transporting its export and import via the neighboring. Of course, this will improve, of course, the trade in the landlocked country in East Africa.
Let's go to Somalia now, where one of Al Shabaab's commanders, the most wanted, has been killed by Somali forces. What do we know about Hussein Mualim Hassan?
Of course, Hussein Mualim Hassan was a wanted Al Shabaab top commander, and the Somali National Forces have announced that they have killed him in an operation that took place near Bod Hashule, about 17 kilometers north of Wajid in the Bakol region, according to the statement from the Minister of Defense. Of course, Mahal bin, one of the Al-Shabaab most wanted leader, has been with the group for more than 15 years and was the central figure in planning and executing attacks across the multiple regions, including Irahim, Middle and Lower Shebele, and of course Mahdud, Gal Hadud, Bay, Bakol, and the regions of Gedo, which have experienced attacks by the Al-Shabaab. And remember, during his time in the group, he held several positions, including the operation commander in Bay, Bakol, and Gedo regions, head of taxation in Bakol, and chief of the intelligence in the Shebele region, and of course, the Iraim, deputy to the Fahad Mohammed Shangole, of course, the Al-Shabaab propaganda and indoctrination chief. The minister said the death, of course, marks a major blow to Al-Shabaab's leadership structure. Of course, it comes with government forces intensify operations in the southwest state aimed to weakening the military groups command a network. Of course, recently we have seen the attacks or the fight between the Al-Shabaab, AMISOM, and Somalia military forces.
For how long had the defense ministry in Somalia been searching for him?
Of course, being a wanted man, he has been at the group for nearly 15 years, and there were also calls, by there were pounds on his head, both by the national government and of course the U.S. Government. But of course, having managed to kill him in an operation, of course, it is a win for the Somalian national forces.
Right, let's go to Burundi now. Then the president of that country, Evariste Ndayishimiye, has laid the foundation stone for a historic railway. It's going to connect Burundi to Tanzania, and this is Burundi's first rail network. What went into this project in terms of infrastructure and funding?
Of course, thank you so much, Asanda. This is now it is a milestone for the landlocked and a poor country in the world, Burundi. Of course, the historic project begins with the foundation stone ceremony for the 282 kilometer. That's about 105 miles. The standard gauge railway, which begins in Musongwati, a region that is located 160 kilometers southwest of the capital, Bujumbura. Of course, the bilateral a conversation between the two countries, that is Tanzania and Burundi, and the Central Corridor. Of course, it is a strategic trade route connecting the mainland economic to the port of Dar es Salaam and in Tanzania. Of course, the rail will boost the connectivity trade between the Burundi and Tanzania. Of course, the rail is a game changer for the landlocked country, which has faced significant challenges in the transportation and trade connectivity. Of course, Asanda, this project is funded by the African Development Bank, and of course, it aims to connect the landlocked countries in East Africa with the sea by providing these nations with access to global markets. This, of course, will also improve the infrastructure, will play a very critical role in enhancing economic growth and integration by reducing transportation costs, of course, and time for goods moving between the Great Lake region and international trade hubs. Of course, this is the first ever rail project in Burundi, and it is going to be a game changer for the Burundians and of course, the government of Burundi, because they want to increase trade in the region.
It will take 6 years to finish. Yes, it is a game changer, but are there any foreseen challenges to this project?
Of course, they are for foreseen challenges for this project because remember, Burundi is a landlocked country, and the country has a lot of hills. So the engineers will really have difficult times when navigating the hills, and of course the financial challenges because we are not sure, and these are not come out clearly whether the African Development Bank is financing this project 100%. Of course, the target is to have this landlocked country connected to the sea through the Tanzanian port of Dar es Salaam. Of course, some of the challenges would be the accessibility of other countries if they want to access or use the rail to transport goods. Of course, this is in line with the economic growth of the poorest country, Burundi. Of course, we'll see whether after 6 years this project will be a success for the Burundians.
Dennis, always great catching up. We'll do this again next week, Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. That's Dennis Beru, who is a journalist and team leader at Grassroot Journalism Kenya, giving us a concise roundup of stories making headlines in the East African region of the continent. Let's say good morning to Jolani Tulongwepe. She's got our news headlines.